Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this recap episode of Flow Over Fear. And today I want to talk about the interview that I just had with Joanna Krysiak, who helps people to rise above stress and anxiety and improve their overall health and well-being through breathwork, through the power of breathwork. And this was a very, very important episode because this is something we often neglect to our detriment, is breathing. Now, of course, we don't just stop breathing and forget about it completely, but we do it subconsciously. We do it so often that it becomes so habitual that we don't think about it a lot of times. But we also don't think about the benefits of conscious breathing, of how, if we're intentionally breathing in the right ways, how it can improve our health and can minimize our stress and anxiety and help us to be more confident and more energetic and thrive in the world. Breathwork is something that I picked up a number of years ago, back in 2015 or 2016, when I first learned about Wim Hof. And Wim Hof, if you've never heard of him, you can Google him. You can find a ton of videos on him. He is essentially this crazy Norwegian guy who is famous for submerging himself in ice for long periods of time. So he's kind of one of the pioneers of cold exposure through ice baths and breath work. And his particular style of breath work is pretty extreme. And I started there, and it was a powerful method for me because it helped me to gain more energy. And I'm a huge advocate for Wim Hof. But if I'm being honest, I haven't dug in a lot deeper into breath work as a whole, and what other options are out there and how to do that. I've known of a few, and I even have this bracelet that my wife has made. And if you're watching on YouTube, you could see it's just a beaded bracelet that has one red bead, and that red bead is to remind me. Well, this whole bracelet is to remind me to breathe. So I have it on my wrist that if I can be reminded of it at any point during the day, it reminds me, oh yeah, take some time. And there's about 15 to 20 beads on here to take some intentional deep breaths. And even that helps, just because now I'm breathing into my belly. So I've known like just the basics of, breathing into my belly first, filling fully from the bottom up, and being slow and box breathing and things like that. But in this episode, we dig really deeply into the physiology and the benefits of different types of breathing, because there are different types for different purposes. And Joanna is an expert in all of that. And where she got her start, she has a very, very powerful and tragic story of when she was younger. Her mom passed away early due to suicide at the age of 7. And then much later, when she was a late teenager, her dad passed away. And so she dealt with a lot of trauma of losing both parents to suicide. And obviously the emotions that were within Joanna at that time were suppressed for a period of time. And while she was in school studying math and physics, and ultimately studying to become a civil engineer, which would have been a very stable career for her. She found in that process, when she was about 19, that she wasn't really fulfilled in that life, and that she wanted something more. And at the time, she was really using fitness, really using exercise as what she would describe as an addiction, to help her to cope with a lot of the pain and the emotions that she had from those early traumas, because she was suppressing them. She felt that she had to be kind of the stable, the rock for the rest of her family, and she used the working out to manage those emotions, to help with them. But she considered it more of an addiction. And even though exercise or fitness can be a healthy thing. Obviously, we want to exercise, we want to keep our body in shape, but to many extents, we could take it to the extreme, and it can become unhealthy at times if we're not addressing the issues, if we're suppressing or fighting the trauma or the anxiety that we've had in the process. It led to what Joanna would call a dysregulated nervous system, covering up a root cause of why she was going to the gym in the first place. And it was when it was in the process of her transformation that she realized that she didn't want to live another day. After the passing of her dad, she didn't want to live another day unfulfilled. And that's when she decided to move full time into helping people with health and fitness and making that a career and a life for herself, where she's found the fulfillment and found what she needs. And later in the process, in about 2018, she found breathwork through a podcast. And through finding breathwork, what she found in the process of breathwork, and this is what a lot of us find when we start getting intentional about our breathing, which is truly life affirming, is that it can be, as Joanna described it, and this was such a powerful statement, that breath is the bridge between our conscious and our subconscious. And that when we tap into it, it can help to release some of that trauma, to release some of those emotions, to bring them up in a safe way. Now, I want to disclaim, and we talked about this in the episode, that if you're struggling with trauma, if you're struggling with depression or mental health issues in any way, breath work is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all of our problems. It's a tool in the toolbox. So if you're genuinely struggling right now, get help. Find the help that you might need. Help is out there. Therapy is out there. The right kind of support is out there. So please get that help. But breath work is just a tool in the toolbox to help facilitate some of that. And so that's what Joanna found in that process. And as she began to dig deeper, she found her calling in terms of how she could help people find better health and wellness, reduce anxiety, reduce stress through breath work. And one thing that was recommended in this process, and I wholeheartedly agree, is to start slow. You don't have to jump right into the extreme things. And yeah, I said earlier that I jumped right into Wim Hof, and I fell into that trap originally with breathwork, which was which was to say I watched all the YouTube videos, I saw these extreme things, and I ended up spending 30 or 40 minutes at a time every day doing breathwork, and I still do it to this day because it's great, it's fantastic, it works for me, but it may not work for everybody, and I want to make that clear, is that there's no one size fits all approach into this, but the Wim Hof worked for me, but the approach that I took, which was to jump in, and swan dive way past my comfort zone to get into it, was probably a bit of a reckless approach. I should have eased into it a little bit more. I should have learned the mechanics of it a little bit better before getting into it directly. And so it took time for me to get familiar with it enough so that I knew how breath work could help my energy systems and my physiology and all of those things. So Joanna recommends starting slow. You don't have to jump right in and do 40 minutes to an hour, 2 hours of breath work every day. Not everybody can do that. Very few of us can. So start with just a few minutes at a time. And that also begins with listening to your body. And that's the great thing about breath work as a whole, is it actually focuses your attention on your body. It forces you to become self-aware. If you're focused on breathing and you're breathing in through your nose and it's going into your belly and you're focused on these things, you become highly attuned and highly attentive to the sensations of your body. Where you're starting to feel the tingling in your fingers or your toes. And when you're getting that self-awareness, With that self-awareness comes presence, and presence is very meditative. And so there were a couple of generally speaking, how Joanna recommends that we, bring ourselves back to a state of calm is to breathe through our nose more often. A lot of times you might find if you're not paying attention to your breath that you're breathing through your mouth and you're breathing very shallow. And when you're breathing shallow, when you're breathing in your mouth, you're getting into what's called conscious hyperventilation. And when that's happening, you're actually, you're lowering your CO2 levels and you're causing, more anxiety. And so she recommends breathing through your nose more slowly, more often, just becoming more attentive to it throughout the day. And the way that you can become more attentive to it, because I often forget to breathe throughout the day when I'm just involved in those things, is through a process called habit stacking. And this was brilliant. This was a brilliant, brilliant technique that she recommended. So if you're doing something throughout the day, say you are reading, say you're driving to work, and be careful driving to work with breathing exercises. Don't do anything aggressive with breathing while you're driving or doing something with heavy machinery. And certainly don't do any of these activities while you're in water or around water, because there is a risk of drowning. So do this in a comfortable place. But you could be reading, you could be exercising, you could be just having your morning coffee, and make those your triggers. Make those your triggers for practicing some of that conscious breathing, breathing through your nose. And she has an acronym called NLSL, which stands for nose low, which means breathing into the belly; slow, which means breathing slowly; and then light, which is you want to feel light while you're doing it. So NLSL is the way that she suggested we approach that. And so that's kind of the everyday breathing of becoming attentive to it while you're habit stacking, finding other activities in which you could do this breathing, which trigger you to do it. Reading a book like my book, Shifting Gears from Anxiety and Addiction to a Triathlon World Championship. If you're reading that book, doing this breathing exercise will help you stay calm during the very intense and exciting parts of the book. Anyway, sorry for that shameless plug, but I got to do it when I can, right? It's my show for crying out loud. Anyway, a couple of great methods that Joanna suggested that we practice have a couple of particular purposes. And if you want to get the specific details of how to practice them and what benefits they have and the physiology that happens within your body, because that's the important part, listen to the episode and find that part and listen to it a few times, because we get into real specific detail about how the breathing methods are affecting us physiologically and how they can improve our health. For example, there are what Joanna has learned and what she's been trained on is called pause breath work. And there are a couple of other types of breath work that she gets into, including reduced volume breathing. And reduced volume breathing helps us to raise our CO2 level, which increases our tolerance. You may be wondering why raising our CO2 levels are important. Well, CO2 is an important part of our breathing system because it actually helps in the facilitation of oxygen entering into our system and getting as much as we can. It also helps us to clean out our bodies through CO2 and breathing out. So raising our CO2 levels increases that tolerance, and over time, over the longer term, helps us to manage stress better. So this is a practice that you might want to do daily, is that reduced volume breathing. Now other types to that are the conscious hyperventilation, which is what we tend to see with things like maybe Wim Hof or other things like that. And those techniques help to lower our CO2, which in a moment, in an instant, help us to bring up or release trauma or release our emotional stress or anxiety, kind of in that fight or flight kind of things. And it helps us to do it in a safe way. So Joanna's recommendation is that we try to practice the reduced volume breathing on a daily basis to manage and regulate our stress and anxiety, while doing the conscious hyperventilation techniques more infrequently, like maybe 1 to 3 times per week, especially when you're starting out. So these specific techniques, not getting into them here, you can contact Joanna through her website, or look her up on Instagram at joanna.k, which is JOJOANNA.k, on Instagram. And you can find out how specifically to do these techniques. You can also reach out to her and do her workshops and things, and they're really powerful. But those specific techniques can help in those particular for those particular reasons. She also walked us through a specific breathing technique called the physiological sigh. And she mentioned that, if you ever have a pet or a dog or something like that, and you see them start to lay down, they do that sigh. And that's them actually practicing this. And this was something she learned from podcasts with Andrew Huberman. That psychological sigh was described at the end of the episode, and could really help us in the moment to regulate some of that stress. I believe that having something like a totem, like a bracelet, something that you can reference to remind you to breathe throughout the day, can trigger you to actually to be more intentional about your breathing and remind you throughout periods of that day. I will be having conversations with people or on this podcast where I simply touch the bracelet and I'm reminded that I need to breathe. And this particular bracelet is something my wife sells. So another shameless plug. She sells these bracelets that we call calm bracelets that help us to remind us when to breathe. You simply hold on to each bead. And while you go around, you take a deep breath in, you take a deep breath out, and you just go around until you reach the other side. It reminds you, it's a great reminder on being intentional about breathing. So to learn more about these breathing techniques and anything else, I really, really highly suggest you listen to the episode. Reach out to Joanna Krysiak and find out more about these techniques, because it's going to change your life. This is the best way to get energy, to help with your sleep, to regulate stress and anxiety. Breathing is one of those powerful, powerful tools that we have in our toolbox. Again, it is not the panacea. It's not going to solve all your problems. But if you're avoiding it, if you're ignoring it, you're not helping the situation. You're probably contributing more to the issues. So this is a great tool to help regulate it and bring up some of those to bring up some of those emotions so that they can finally be released. So check out Joanna. And thanks for listening to this episode. Look forward to catching you next time. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.